Hello everyone! Today is the day I officially joined BookTube, and I do that by creating my first original tag. So I was searching for an end of the year book tag, and while it seems to exist, everyone was doing it in October, and it's framed for fall. And last I checked, December was the last month of the year. So today I will be sharing with you my very own book tag titled Closure. And it's really going to be an end of the year book tag, and that's why I'm doing this. It's actually Christmas. The title of this tag was actually inspired by the Taylor Swift song Closure, because I'm quirky like that sometimes. So without further ado, let's jump right in. This book tag has 10 questions, so it's pretty short, and if you'd like to, you could follow along with me and post your results in the comments, because I could really use some book recommendations. So here goes. Question 1. What were your reading goals for this year, and did you reach them? So starting off with a pretty basic question. So my reading goal this year was to read 100 books, which is a little less than 2 books a week, which I found quite reasonable considering that in 2021 I barely read any books, which is kind of embarrassing for me since I used to define myself as a reader. That's why I had to set this goal so I could actually motivate myself to read. So, did I reach my goal? Drumroll please. I started 169 books this year. So when I say I started 169 books, that means it includes all the books I finished, all the books I did not finish, and all the books that I reread. So some of these books did come in twice on the list. Of those books, how many are new books that I finished? Well, drumroll please, 126. So yes, I met my goal, and I feel very happy about it, honestly. Now, I'm not trying to flex or shame anyone because obviously everybody has different lives and everybody has different goals. So if you've reached your goal, congratulations. And if you haven't reached your goal, well, you always have next year. Question 2. What were your top 3 favorite books of this year? Now, I made this top 3 because how could I ever pick one? I mean, I don't think that's physically possible. So, I am going to limit this to 1 book per series, and I'm going to avoid talking about one book in particular because I have talked about it too much. I'm actually saving it for another entry later in this list. So, in no particular order, The Rose Society by Marie Lu, which is the 2nd book in the Young Elites trilogy, Renegades by Marissa Mayer, which is the 1st book in the Renegades trilogy, and As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson, which is the 3rd book in the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy. So let's break these down one by one. So I've actually talked about the Young Elites in a book review that you can find up here somewhere. So I'll be quick with this. So The Young Elites is a trilogy about this girl named Adelina Amaturu who has powers, and she joins a society of other people with powers called Young Elites, and they're trying to fight oppression from the oppressive government. But Adelina is different because she's sort of dark and she has vengeance in her heart. So I love this book and The Rose Society, the 2nd book in particular, because this is where she goes on her anti-hero journey. The anti-hero trope is when your protagonist doesn't always have the typical heroic traits, for example, being righteous, being good. So in this case, Adelina has vengeance and she is kind of mad. But it's definitely very interesting, and I do recommend the trilogy. Renegades by Marissa Mayer is another fantasy trilogy about this girl named Nova Artino who has powers and is also an anti-hero, and we're starting to see a pattern here. Nova lives in a world where there are superheroes called the Renegades and villains called the Anarchists, and both sides have powers. Nova has a thing against the Renegades because they failed her early in life, so she's with the Anarchists, making her an anti-hero. The premise of the book and the series, in fact, is she has to infiltrate the Renegade Society by posing as one of them, and you get a lot of angst, some romance definitely, and this book is just my cup of tea. One thing I want to point out is the found family in the Anarchists, because while they are the villains, the story is sort of told through their point of view since Nova's on their side, so we start feeling a little bit of sympathy for them. In addition, you can really see in some scenes how much they do care about each other. So it's sort of a twisted found family in a sense. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson is another trilogy, but this one's unique in the sense that it's not a fantasy book, which is quite interesting because I usually read fantasies. So for a mystery/crime story to be on my top 3 favorite books is quite interesting. So the premise is our main character, Pippa, is investigating a previously closed murder case for her school project. And it's basically a kid detective story. The unique part about it is that the stakes get very high, even life-threatening, especially in the 3rd book, which is why I put it as my favorite, As Good as Dead, because it sort of turns around at the end and there's a plot, not exactly a plot twist, but the tables turn. I will stop speaking because spoilers, but it's very, very interesting and very, very suspenseful, and it was a fun read overall. Question 3. What was your favorite standalone book of this year? So I added this question in because I realized that I mostly read series. So I would like to give some recognition to those standalone books that I did read. So I have talked about this before, and while I was trying not to talk about things that I've talked about before, I'm failing. I read so few standalone books. So my favorite standalone book of this year is Pride and Prejudice. So yes, I did talk about this during my mid-year freakout tag, but I think I have more to say about it now. It's a classic novel by Jane Austen, but don't be put off by the fact that it's a classic and that it's really long, because it's actually really interesting. So at first glance, it looks like your typical romance novel set in the 1800s, but it's not. It actually has many, many layers, and the most interesting that I can find is the idea of don't judge a book by its cover. The premise is that everybody is looking to get married. The novel is actually about the interactions between our main character, Elizabeth Bennet, and this rich aristocrat named Fitzwilliam Darcy. And basically, Lizzie has disdain for Mr. Darcy because he's rich and unsociable, and Darcy has disdain for Elizabeth because she's poor. And if you look closely at other interactions in the book, generally people hold other people in higher or lower regard based on their social status, etc. And showing all this through the characters' day-to-day interactions is very masterful. I think Jane Austen is a genius. Question 4. What was your favorite series of this year? Okay, so this is the one that I was kind of refraining from talking about earlier. And can you guess it? Drumroll please. 6 of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. So I have raved extensively about this book in my mid-year freakout tag. So I think I'm going to try to be quick about this and fail. So quick plot summary. 6 people called the Crows go on an impossible heist to steal something, and there is amazing banter, amazing chemistry, amazing relationships, both romantic and platonic, and just perfectly timed witty quips for a balance of humorous and dark. One thing that I want to point out in this book is the idea of magic. So usually magic is this thing to be awed at and desired, but no, in this universe people with magic are called Grisha, and they are discriminated against, and this really shows how people hate what they are afraid of and what they cannot understand. It's a very interesting take on magic. Another interesting thing that is done quite well is the inclusion of magic, but not explicitly. Like, this book is not about magic, it's just set in a world where magic is normal, and it just is so fun to read about. This book is part of a duology called 6 of Crows. The sequel is Crooked Kingdom, but in this universe there are actually 2 other series. Shadow and Bone, which is set before this book, which actually was turned into a Netflix TV series, which honestly I love, and a sequel series called King of Scars, which you will read once you are invested in the plot. and the characters. I think I got invested more in the characters than the plot because I love these characters. There's some emotional damage here. Next question, question 5. What genre or genres would describe your reading year? So yes, I ripped this question off from Spotify Wrapped, where they tell you what genres you listen to this year. So I thought what if I did that for books? Now, okay, mine's not too surprising because this year I pretty much stayed in my comfort zone. Next year I'm hoping to maybe try different genres. This year my 2 genres that I stayed in were mostly fantasy and romance. Well, saying fantasy and romance isn't accurate. It's particularly fantasy with a romance subplot. That could be excluded. I'm okay with the romance subplot being excluded, but I generally don't read purely romance books. Not fun. And the fantasy I read was mostly YA fantasy. Okay. Question 6. What is your favorite character from the books you've read this year? Okay, so many options to choose from. I'm specifically not going to mention what I mentioned in the middle of the year. So I've elected to go with Kitty Chen from The Poppy War. The Poppy War is another trilogy where the main character has powers and is an anti-hero. Look at me! Kitty is our main character, Rin's best friend. I love him because he is so pure, he is so innocent, and his friendship with Rin is so I would die for you. I guess I have to talk about the book as well. So the premise of the book is that our main character, Rin, was born in a poor family who sort of hates her, and her only way out is to pass this crazy hard exam to get a scholarship into a university. Of course, she gets in, and then there's a bunch of stuff about her, not getting in. But it's a red herring, because that's not what the entire series is about. Because she can do magic. And then there's this entire exploration into shamanism, and bizarre things happening, and then Rin goes mad. Okay, so I will stop here to prevent any more spoilers, but basically, Kitty befriended her the moment she started at the university, and I love him for that because, unlike the other students, he didn't care that she was poor. And then it became a very loyal friendship. It ended up in a situation where he would do anything for her, but then there was this big moral dilemma of, do I follow you, or do I do what's best for you? So the entire thing is so emotionally damaging, but wholesome somehow at the same time. So I recommend the series if you like depressing fantasy, dark fantasy, really, really dark fantasy. Next question, question 7. How many books did you DNF this year? I love how I said, did not finish. How many books did you not finish this year? 9. I'm not going to name them because I DNF'd them for various reasons. Question 8. What books are you intending to read but haven't gotten around to reading? Okay, so this one I'm kind of embarrassed about. Remember this? It's A Wrinkle in Time. I said I was going to read it during my mid-year freakout tag, and I'm halfway through, but then I came to a standstill and got distracted and started reading other books, so that's kind of embarrassing, but maybe I should finish this before the year ends. The rest on my list are either books I'm in the middle of reading or books that I've borrowed from the library but haven't started yet. So we have We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I don't know what it's about yet, but it's pretty interesting. I'm 1/3 of the way through. Okay, the other book I'm in the middle of reading is Codename Verity by Elizabeth E. Wayne. I started reading this book after seeing my cousin reading it and her telling me that she hated it. So of course I had to give it a try. Now, it's not boring, but it does start rambling at times. The main character is currently a prisoner of war. I don't know what happens later. I'm 19% of the way through, but she's a prisoner of war and she's documenting information about the opposing side. And currently, her writing is very train of thought, so I will slowly get through it. The other 2 books I have on my shelf are A Magic Steeped in Poison by Judy Island. I read the blurb for this. It seemed pretty interesting. It's fancy, it's about magic, cool stuff. Don't know what it's about yet, but I'm excited to read it. And the other one I have is Who Could That Be at This Hour by Lemony Snicket. This is the prequel series to a series of unfortunate events. The prequel series is called All the Wrong Questions. And basically, I recently watched a series of unfortunate events TV show, and it's great, and it's so much better than the movie. I love it, and I feel like it probably deserves a whole conversation to itself. And I guess that's everything I was intending to read. I don't think I'm going to finish all of them before the year's over, but this is what I'm going to read soon. Question 9. What is your most anticipated release for next year? Okay, I have 2 on this list. One of them is actually brought forward from this year. It's Silverborn by Jessica Townsend, which is the 4th book in the Nevermore series. I love that series so much, even though it's a middle school series, but I'm so invested. Anyways, it was scheduled to come out October this year, but it's been pushed to October next year. And I'm being patient because I'm a nice reader, but I really, really want to read that book. The other one is The Sun and the Star. It's by Rick Riordan. It's a companion standalone book to everything else in the Percy Jackson universe. I actually read those 3 series this year. And I am so excited because this book, The Sun and the Star, is about 2 characters from the series, Will and Nico, and I love them. I am motivated to hold out until May. I can make it to May, okay? I can make it to May. We're down to the last question. Okay, here goes. Question 10. What are your updated or not updated reading goals for next year? So I don't think I'm going to update my reading goals because I think they were pretty reasonable, and I of course don't want to reduce the number of books I aim to read, but I don't think I need to increase them. So 100 books is a good goal, but I want to add something onto that. Well, maybe 2 things actually. First of all, I want to aim to expand into more genres than I did this year, because this year I mostly read fantasy with a romance subplot. So I might try other things, like maybe more mystery. Another thing, and this is sort of like a challenge that I want to do, is pull 1 quote from every book I read next year, then collate them and read them out of context, because I think that might be fun. So I'll probably collect ones that I find funny. And with that, we have come to the end of the Closure book tag. If you enjoyed it and you'd like to try it yourself, feel free to post your results in the comments below, because I need the book recommendations. I want to read different books. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Yes, I got your letter. How could I be better? Can't believe it's over. Please give me some closure. Because I need closure after reading all these emotionally damaging books. Can you guess it? Drumroll please. 6 of Crows!